Welcome back to Two Views, One Book. We had a suggestion from a friend to read this title, Morning Glory Milking Farm by C.M. Nascosta, who is actually a best-selling author. So we're going to talk about this book. And maybe read a couple excerpts. In fact, I think I'll start by reading one. I had one in particular. I was like, oh, look at this page number. Let's remember that. Okay. I think it was this part. He huffed a familiar, delicious sound that went to that place between her thighs she dreamed of him licking, a fantasy that spurred suppositions over how rough his tongue was, if it would be velvety smooth or textured and coarse, if he'd press it into her and lick her clit until she came, its unknown texture flooding his mouth with her own honey.
This was a spectacular book.
In this particular daydream, the taste of her would drive him crazy. His thick cock would already be drooling pre-cum. Okay, also, let me finish reading. Drooling pre-cum in anticipation, and he would flip her before the tremors of her orgasm would even be over, unable to control his ardor for another minute. He would enter her from behind and make her clench around his girth as he pumped into her with those slow, solid thrusts, his heavy balls slapping her still trembling clit, making her come again around his cock. Okay, they used the word pre-cum in this book way too many times.
Well, that is a thing. Go on, Cooks.
There must not be very many other synonyms for it because we don't know if this is this a boy or a girl author, uses it a lot.
Well, I guess that's if you're going to describe something, I guess you might as well call it what it is. I'm not sure what else to tell you on that one.
There is very little story in this book. There is a story. It's about a girl who is looking for a job in her field. She has a very specific, architecture degree or something she wants to do with landscape. See, I don't even remember. I just read it. Landscaping, architecture, something. And so in order to earn money and get out of debt until she can find that very specific job, she works at this milking farm where they milk minotaurs in order to make Viagra.
So they need bull semen for this Viagra. It's every bit of story I hoped it would be. Whenever I was first shown this book, I was like, this is something I have to read. Vanessa was originally kind of against this, and I was like, nah, we got to do this.
So we did, and the story actually, if you like a slow build, there is a slow build, they have a flirtation before they get to things. That was nice, that worked. But lots and lots of porn. I'm not even gonna call it smut. It was porn. Also, I have a question for you, and I feel really dumb asking you. But when we first started reading this book, I realized that I kept picturing a centaur and not a minotaur. What is a minotaur?
What's on the cover of the book?
A personified bull?
It's a bull man.
So a centaur is one of those half man, half horses.
It's a centaur, yes.
I guess I had never heard of a minotaur before reading this book.
Oh, you ever heard of the Minotaur maze? Where they have to go through the maze, and then the final, at the end, before the treasure, they have to fight the Minotaur?
I don't think so. I'm pretty new to the fantasy world.
Okay.
I don't think so. So I had a really hard time.
Well, I admit they don't have Minotaurs in Harry Potter, which is probably why you didn't get introduced
That's probably
to it.
the only fantasy book I've ever read, yeah.
But they're pretty common.
I mean, I figured
and
because there
fantasy.
wasn't a lot of explanation about what they were. So I assumed that just based on the writing. But the town they live in, I do kind of like the idea of this town. Like,
Okay,
there's...
let's talk about world setup then.
Okay.
I was really kind of surprised because I had no idea what the world was going to be like whenever I first started this. And I was like, okay, well, first started off, she's on a computer, and then, she's watching videos and
It
about
seemed
the
really
job.
modern
And I was
day.
like, huh, this is interesting that this is set in modern day times.
Yeah.
I mean, they have phones, cell phones, they have computers. There's
It was very realistic.
Coffee shops. It was just set in modern day times, just with these mythical creatures around. And I did appreciate the world setup on that. I mean, they had all sorts of creatures. They talked about moth
But
people.
it's when she moved to the town. Like, I specifically liked the little town she lived in.
Yeah.
So the town where the milking farm is, where she goes to work, is outside of a big city. So it's a suburb, but it's a really nice suburb where they do have lots of mythical creatures living. They have fairies. They have... what are those? Orcs. They have...
well, one of her friends she gets in here is a vampire.
Yes, they have vampires.
So it covers the whole spectrum.
And they have things that cater to all of these different species within their community, different restaurants, different things at their grocery store, and people are very accepting. I just thought that was really interesting. And then when they go, like, as a couple, when her and this Minotaur go to the big city, to her apartment, she realizes that he is not very well accepted, like he is in the community where he currently lives and the milking farm is. I just thought that was really nice, like that people belong and feel safe, and I thought that was kind of a sweet aspect to the story.
Yeah, and the little suburb that she's talking about was also more of a well-to-do area, and so I mean it was a nice setting for it, to be honest with you. I did enjoy the meets at the coffee shop. The coffee shop was a big part of the book. And so there was that. And yeah, I did overall enjoy the world setup in there and think it was well done. So.
Okay.
On to the good stuff, or?
Well, I
something
have
else?
another question.
Okay.
There were times that this book felt a little like it might be treading into bestiality. I felt a little weird sometimes.
Yeah, some of the terminology that she chose to use during certain scenes, specifically like the rutting,
Yeah.
things like that.
And how he would bump into the
Yeah, well,
hooves, his hooves and
breeding,
flakes.
what was it,
The breeding bench.
breeding stock or something like that. Yeah, so she did incorporate, which I thought was pretty clever and also funny, things like you would see at like a dairy farm into into the milking procedure. So
Milking.
yes, so it was well done on that aspect of things. And I thought some of the little things they did too, like with aspects. Remember how I talked about world building before?
Yeah.
Like something I didn't think about, and I'm just randomly throwing this out here, was when they were in his house, that he put on little boots, little like rubber shoe, like Crocs, basically put to walk around the house in, so it didn't tear up his floor or mess the sheets up, because he has hooves.
Yes.
And I was like,
and they addressed that several times.
That's very interesting. And then also in the breeding stock or whatever like that, they have like turf where their hoof goes. So whenever they're like, they talk about them grinding their hooves or scraping on it, And I was like hearing the hooves against the turf, and I was like, let's see, they're doing all these little details.
Yes.
And I was like, that was very clever, very well done. And so there was that.
Okay, sometimes the way also she describes the anatomy. Okay, so they have different names for these different minotaurs that come into the milking farm, but
I wanted to get to this.
Okay, we can, but this passage just like describes a little bit. It says, every minotaur who visited the farm had the same anatomy, vaguely human-like in shape, with thick mid-shaft swells and bulbous heads, but she would be able to pick his particular endowment out of a lineup with ease.
She was in love.
with the sounds he made while she milked him. That's what attracted her to him.
Well.
Yes.
Okay, so the one that's the Minotaur she falls in love with. Do you need the book?
Do you want to read a passage?
No, not yet. I don't need the book yet. But this was her first client.
Oh, her first one she did by herself outside with her trainer. Like, she was still being trained, but she actually was hands-on. So she was hands-on with the bull, having a good time. And I like how you used both your hands, because she has to use both her hands. So, needless to say, the Minotaurs are very well endowed. And apparently she has tiny hands. They do say that a couple times. Yeah,
they talk about her small hands. So anyways, this is her first client, and he apparently really liked her because he was originally a clock watcher, right?
I don't remember, actually.
I think he was a clock watcher, which, okay, so now it's getting to they have the bulls that come in that are called earners. Okay, so they get paid for the amount that they give. Is the best way
and they're in very regularly.
And so they come in, they give large quantities, so they get paid well. So they're just in
and they give
get the job
big
done
tips.
and get the job done and get out. And then they have clock watchers, which are what he was originally. They're just like
there.
I'm
like,
on my lunch
hurry
break.
up.
Let's get it done and get out. And then
I have other places to be.
The good little cows.
Those ones were almost hilarious. Like, I feel like I maybe laughed out loud at those. God. They're like these young minotaurs that come in and they don't know what to do with themselves. Like, you barely touch them and they're milked. Like,
there's that, or
they have like these fetishes that they try to implement.
Like, they request special aprons that make them look like
a
cows.
Milkmaid apron.
Yeah, so they like the whole fantasy and fetish of being milked, and so it's really hilarious. And I also like the fact she went into that as well, because I'm like, that's something you would run into as well.
It really is. I felt, the more we talk about this book, the more I think I actually did kind of like it, but it was so silly.
Oh, don't like this book. It was so funny. It was so funny, and once again, there was a lot of porn.
Lots.
And like, it's within the first 10 pages, you're already getting into it. So I mean, it's straight out of the gate, getting after it. And part of what I thought was funny about it too is, as the storyline progressed, her getting more and more into the thought process of getting it on with this Minotaur.
She had really explicit fantasies.
Mm-hmm. And so, just the idea of like, she's like, I can't wait to feel the 24 ounces.
Yeah, that was gross.
That was like, wow.
That part grossed me out.
That was a lot. I was like, I found myself when I went into a gas station like that. I was like, this is a 12-ounce bottle. This is 24 ounces. Holy smokes, that's a lot. So after I read this book, I was like, wow, that's a gift. That's a gift to give somebody right there. And
the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah, and she apparently wanted all of it. So that was a thing as well.
At one point, he required 2 milking bottles.
Yeah, he did. He had a good day. He was a little backed up.
They talked about how heavy his balls were a lot. That was weird to me. I didn't like that.
He's a bull.
Yeah.
He's a bull.
Yeah.
So.
But then, did you look at any of this, like, after the story, like the sequels or whatever? Like, so I wonder, and I'm not really clear because I didn't spend a lot of time with it, I wonder if one of these books that they previewed after the story ended is from the Minotaur's point of view, because it kind of seemed like it. And then there are other books in this series, too. Like, there was, let me see if I can find it. Moon-Blooded Breeding Clinic.
That's a vampire one.
Yep.
Or a werewolf, one of the two.
Yeah. So there's other ones of these. I don't know that I will read them, but for something outside of what I would normally read, it was entertaining.
So did you actually really enjoy the book? I mean,
there were parts of it I did. I do think it was too pornographic. Like there wasn't there.
Yes, it was. It was very spot on.
Some of the words were repetitive, and that gets kind of boring. And you're like, oh, okay, we've heard that before.
Sometimes there's only so many different ways you can describe something.
Well, I mean, when you do it like it's a 250-page book, and it's like every 10 pages. There are parts of it I really liked. I mean, we talked about them. And it was fun, and it was silly, and it kind of acknowledged, like, I felt like it acknowledged a little bit that it was kind of silly.
It was self-aware. Is the best way to describe that.
I felt like it was a little self-aware. I thought it was fun. Like, I kind of giggled about it and rolled my eyes when you brought it to me, and I was like, I know exactly what kind of book this was. But I think it even surprised me. Like, I do think there was a little bit more, like, setting development, probably because there's more books and the setting is reused. But there were things that the author went into depth with that I was surprised about and pleased with. Like, that was appealing.
So I'll say storyline-wise, yes, it's very cookie-cutter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, girl thrown into a new job or a new scenario, meets somebody, she starts falling in love with them, or very fantasizes.
Lots of tension and build-up.
Then you have your one little mishap, the misunderstanding, and then... But this one wasn't near as dramatic as I thought it was going to be, because usually it's a much more dramatic issue that kind of...
Like breaks them apart before they get together.
Stubs their toe for a lot longer than what it did in here. This one was like 30 minutes went by, and they're like, okay, we're cool, we'll pass this.
Yeah. Like, I don't even remember what you're talking about. Like, I don't even remember them having a misstep.
She realized the nose ring he was wearing was actually like a wedding band. And so she thought he was married.
But she never really talked to him about her feelings about that, which I do think was a mistake. Like, if she wanted to get with him, she should have talked to him about that. But, yeah, she kind of got over it after, like, 2 visits. And he was there twice a week.
After she found out he was divorced and he just hadn't taken the ring out.
Oh, because she thought that his neighbor was his wife for a while.
So there was just this weird misunderstanding. And when she was like, oh, okay, it's fine. Cool, we're good to go.
Yeah.
Now let's go back to your house.
Fantasizing.
Let's go back to your house and have a good time. And so, I mean, it's a very kind of generic story.
But he waited a while to take her back to his house. Like, he really genuinely cared about her, which was really sweet. So there were good things in here to appreciate.
To throw this on there with that, yeah, I don't need to take you back to my house and give it to you if I can just go pay you a few $100 or give you $100 tip and have you crank one out for me on the breeding bench.
And I earn more for donating my special sauce.
So it's a win-win for all parties involved, like we're still having intimate time.
But he didn't do that. He stopped. He said, I'm not going to come back in he stopped.
Oh, I guess
like he was very gentlemanly.
Right. What a gentleman cow he was.
See, that's so weird. So weird.
Well, yeah, not denying that's not weird, but in any case, I gotta talk about the vampire gal a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I thought she was a really interesting character to throw in there.
I felt like she didn't fit. Like a vampire didn't fit in the universe, but her character fit.
But she was a really good friend to her, especially when she waxed her.
Oh my god, I forgot about that part.
So she was really getting upset at one point in time, not the vampire, the main gal, Violet, about not her Minotaur not giving it to her.
Yeah, and she was like, I'm ready.
I need this to happen. And she's
it's happening tonight.
She's like, the vampire gal's like, if you want it to happen, I know how to make it happen. What you're going to do is I'm going to wax you, and then you're not going to wear any undies.
That scene got me.
It was a pretty interesting scene.
Pretty hot.
So,
not the waxing scene, the restaurant scene.
So there was that, and so it's a fun book, and let me tell you, there is a lot of hand job action in this book.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
a ton.
That's the majority of it, but that's her job.
Oh yeah.
That's her job as well. And then when she finally gets her man, oh yeah, she's having a good time with it.
She has to be prepped. I think that's the word they use. She has to be prepped.
Well, if you think about her tiny hands and his big thing, that's a lot. I believe they use the term size queen in there. So, to give you a little
See, there was
idea.
some cheesiness.
I know, and so it hit all the spots, hit all the marks. So, overall, I'm gonna say I enjoyed the book. And when I say a smut book, this is beyond what I would call a smut book, like you said.
I think so.
You know, like
it's not like a Harlequin.
It's like some of the other books I've read. There was some smut in them, but it wasn't enough for me to call it a smut book.
It was beyond smut.
This one definitely jumped over the line quite a bit, you know. So, but it was well worth the read, in my opinion. And
it was a quick read. Like, it was pretty short. I think it took me 3 days to read it. Like, it really, it wasn't.
Yeah, it goes quick. And so if you want something fun to make you smile or giggle a little bit and make you think about things in a different way, this book will do it for you.
It was a pretty good book. I was pleasantly surprised.
You want to give it a rating out of 5?
I probably did on Goodreads. If you want to be my friend on Goodreads, I probably gave it a 4. But after talking about it and realizing how much I liked some of the parts, it was just kind of a fun book. I could give it like a 4.5.
I would say simplistic story. Of course, I'm not expecting a lot out of a book of this nature, so my expectations going in were not super high. So storyline-wise, it was okay. There was a lot of revving up action in here, and so that was cool. That's what I was expecting out of it. So I think entertainment level-wise, I'd probably go a 4.
Yeah, it was pretty
on
good.
That end. I mean, it's not like what I would call a fantastic, great book, but I mean, going into it, knowing what it is.
Yeah.
And with that, yeah, it's totally enjoyable.
And there were parts that were pleasantly surprising.
So, not as terrible as you originally thought it was going to be. I think you were dreading it at first, and I was like,
man, I'm going to have to read this porn book.
This is going to be so
But
great.
I didn't feel that way after I read it.
This is going to be so good. And it was. So, overall, well done there, CM Nascosta.
Nascosta?
Yeah, however you want to say that. So
apparently a pretty famous author, but we've never read anything by this person.
And
we might
check some more out. So, but this was just kind of a one-off we're doing at the moment, and we're going to dive into a different trilogy after this. So. Yeah,
so we had been doing Court of Thorns and Roses. And we have to figure out a different reading schedule because I read those so long ago, I honestly don't remember enough about them to be able to intelligently talk about them. So Kendall's going to read the book first because he's a little bit of a slower reader, and then I'll read the book and we'll film after and see if that works a little bit better. But it's Kendall's pick. So he has chosen Sword of Shannara.
The Shannara, original Shannara trilogy. So. Which
are his favorites, and I've never read them. So we'll do a couple of those coming up. But if you have suggestions, like our friend had this suggestion for us, leave them in the comments. We'll look into it. This one was pleasantly surprising. So
thank you, Angela. This is all because of you. Thank you. All right. Well, you all have a good time. See you later.
See you next time.